Wandering Relics, Sam Anthos, Chapter 5. The First Dinner. I returned home as the streetlights began to glow, one by one, casting golden streaks across the cobblestones of the square. In my hand was the envelope containing today's wages, a thin, brown envelope, but heavier than anything I had ever held. It was heavy because it was proof. Proof that I could do it. Proof that I was not useless. Proof that I was no longer the nameless child, standing and watching others leave. For the first time in my life, I did not have to face a shaking head of refusal. For the first time, I could open the door of a house and say out loud, "Mrs. Ann, I'm home." My voice echoed in the small hallway, beneath the old brass chandelier glowing with warm yellow light. I stood on the faded rug, listening to my own words bounce back, and suddenly realized I had never said those words to anyone before. In the orphanage, we had no one to come home to. The iron gates closing behind me, that was all I had ever known. But here, the words, "I'm home," did not fall into emptiness. They had a place to land. Mrs. Ann's voice drifted from the kitchen, warm and gentle, like the steam rising from a teapot. "How was work today? Is everything all right?" "Yes, I was officially hired," I answered, trying to keep my voice steady, but inside my chest, an emotion was surging. Those 3 words, officially hired, felt like a miracle to me. It meant I was no longer a trial worker, someone who could be sent away at any moment. It meant I belonged there. It meant I had a place. I stood in the hallway, gripping the envelope. The golden light from the chandelier fell upon it, warming it in my palm. I wanted to walk into the kitchen, to stand before Mrs. Ann and say thank you. Not a polite thank you, but a thank you from the very depths of my soul. For giving me a home, for introducing me to Mr. Thompson, for believing in a homeless wanderer. But I did not know how to begin. I lingered in the hallway, hesitating, like a child visiting a stranger's house for the first time, unsure where to place my feet. In the orphanage, we learned not to enter someone else's space without an invitation. We learned not to be too eager. We learned to be silent and wait. Wait for permission. Wait for someone to acknowledge our existence. And sometimes we waited forever. No one had ever taught me how to approach someone and say, "Thank you for giving me a chance." No one taught me that. Because in the orphanage, chances were not things you received. They were things you had to take, and when you took them, you did not say thank you. You simply continued in silence, hoping you would be lucky next time. But Mrs. Ann was not a chance. She was a person, and the gratitude I felt for her was not something I could hide in silence. It needed to be spoken. It needed to be placed on the table, like the hot soup she was cooking. I took a deep breath, preparing to step into the kitchen. But before I could, her voice came from within again, as if she had sensed my hesitation from afar. "Come in, dear. I've just finished cooking dinner. The 2 young people upstairs, one works at the bookstore, the other at the tailor's. They'll be home late. The house is so quiet. Would you like to stay and have dinner with me? To keep an old woman company?" Those words, simple and gentle, were like a hand reaching out through the darkness. I stood still, my heart tightening. Mrs. Ann was not just inviting me to dinner. She was inviting me to share a space, a moment, something I had never had in 18 years, a family meal. I bit my lip, clutching the envelope tightly. "Would that be a bother, ma'am?" I asked, my voice small and polite. "I've just come from the cafe. I haven't showered yet. I'm afraid I might disturb your meal." I heard her laugh from the kitchen, a soft, warm laugh, like water boiling gently on the stove. "The bathroom upstairs is free. Go up and wash up, then come down. Help me set the table. I need to rest my feet for a moment, all right?" That final question made me pause. All right? She was asking for my opinion, as if this decision was not hers alone, as if I had a choice. "Yes, ma'am, I'll do it right away," I answered, my voice slightly choked. I stepped closer to the kitchen, standing at the threshold, and saw Mrs. Ann sitting on the cushioned chair. She wore a gray sweater, her hands resting on her lap, her eyes behind her round spectacles, looking at me with indescribable tenderness. On the stove, the soup was simmering, small bubbles rising and bursting, releasing the aroma of braised meat and vegetables. "Could I give you some of my wages in advance, ma'am?" I asked, holding the envelope toward her. Mrs. Ann looked at me, smiled, and gently shook her head. "Keep it for now. You can pay me at the end of the month. Mr. Thompson wants you to have something to fall back on. In a foreign place, you might need money for anything." I stood still, my heart tightening again. She was telling me that I deserved to have things of my own. "Go wash up," she said softly. "I'll rest my feet for a while. Don't forget to come down for dinner." She pushed her round spectacles up her nose. Her eyes sparkled under the lamplight, holding a warmth I dared not name, because I was afraid that if I named it, if I called it love, this feeling of happiness would vanish immediately. I nodded to her, then quickly climbed the stairs. The wooden steps creaked beneath my feet. I walked slowly, trying not to make noise. But I noticed something. The staircase could use some repair. Some steps were loose, and in a few places I could feel them tilt slightly. I thought about it. Back in the orphanage, I had often been given simple repair tasks. There was an old carpenter, Mr. Gustav, who used to visit and let me help him. He taught me how to hammer nails, how to join wood, how to make an old table sturdy again. I learned a lot from him. Not just carpentry, but patience. If a piece of wood didn't fit, you didn't force it. You measured again, sanded again, and tried once more. Life was the same. You couldn't force it to fit you. You had to adjust yourself. I thought, if I could fix this staircase for Mrs. Ann, it would be a small gift to thank her. Not a grand gift, but something I could do. In the orphanage, we had no money to give presents, but we had our hands. And those hands, even small, even inexperienced, could still do useful things. I walked down the upstairs hallway. The doors to the two other rooms remained closed. They, people my age, were also diligently finding their own paths. I didn't know their names, but I felt a strange kinship with them. I opened my door and stepped into my small space. The last light of day from the window facing the square, the sky had turned deep purple, with the last streaks of gold and orange fading away. I placed the envelope in my bag and put it in the wooden chest at the foot of my bed. I closed the lid gently, silently thanking the chest for safeguarding my important things. I took out my everyday clothes from my bag, a white shirt slightly faded but clean, and dark trousers. I opened the door and turned right into the small bathroom upstairs. The bathroom was small, but clean and warm. On the towel rack was a light blue towel, neatly folded. I guessed Mrs. Ann had left it for me. I turned on the tap, the water gradually warming, steam beginning to rise and cloud the mirror. I stood under the water, feeling each drop flow over my skin, like soft fingers soothing my tired body. I looked at myself in the mirror, through the mist. My face was still thin, still had dark circles under my eyes from lack of sleep. But I felt as if I had grown a little. Not physically, but something inside. A maturity I could not name. Instead of the image of the child silently watching others leave the orphanage, I began to see someone standing firm. I showered quickly, but enough to feel clean and refreshed. I dried my hair with the blue towel, then took the chance to wash my dirty clothes. In the orphanage, we learned to take every opportunity to wash, because warm water was not always available. I wrung out my clothes and hung them on the hook behind the door, hoping they would dry by morning. I put on my clean clothes, combed my hair, and looked at myself in the mirror one more time. I told myself, today I not only have a job, today I have a dinner, a real dinner, with a real person, in a real home. I am allowed to have this. I went downstairs, my steps lighter than before. I knocked gently on the kitchen door frame, not because I didn't know I was allowed in, but because I wanted Mrs. Ann to know I was coming. Mrs. Ann, I'm down. Could you show me how to set the table? Mrs. Ann's voice came from inside, as gentle as waltz music. Come in, dear. I stepped into the kitchen. The small kitchen had become wonderfully warm. On the stove, the soup was still bubbling gently, wisps of steam rising and spreading through the space. The aroma of braised meat, vegetables, and herbs. I didn't know what she had put in it, but it reminded me of something I had never had. The smell of a home. Mrs. Ann sat on the cushioned chair, her legs stretched out, hands resting on her lap. She looked tired, but when she saw me, her eyes brightened. "Ladle the soup into the bowls," she said, pointing to the cupboard. "The bowls are in the cupboard, second shelf. Yes, the ones with the rose pattern. They have wide rims. They cool faster. Put the bread on plates, the plates on the first shelf, the white ones." I followed her instructions. My hands trembled slightly, but I tried to be careful. I took 2 rose-pattern bowls. They were more beautiful than any bowl I had ever seen. In the orphanage, our bowls were plain white enamel with chipped edges. No roses, no patterns. No one ever thought we deserved beautiful things to eat from. After saying goodnight to Mrs. Ann, I climbed the stairs. The wooden steps creaked beneath my feet, but this time it didn't bother me. It was like familiar music, a whisper from the house welcoming me home. I pushed open my door and stepped into the small space that had become familiar. Moonlight from the window spilled in, coating the white bed in a thin layer of silver. I didn't turn on the light. I walked to the window and gently opened it. The night wind from the sea rushed in, cool and carrying an indescribable scent. Salt, seaweed, the distant rhythm of waves against the shore, and something sweet, like wildflowers blooming on the eastern hills. I stood there, leaning against the window frame, looking out over the city at night. From the height of the attic room, I could see the entire square spread out below. The streetlights cast golden pools across the cobblestones, like soft hands caressing the ground. The large maple tree at the corner of the square swayed gently in the wind, its leaves rustling like whispered secrets. In the distance, the clock tower of the church stood solemnly against the night sky, its round face glowing like a small moon. The faded Roman numerals still patiently marked time for the entire city. I could hear the distant chimes, the voice of time, both near and far, both familiar and mysterious. Beneath the moonlight, the orange-tiled roofs of the city were no longer orange. They had turned silver gray, shimmering and ethereal, like a frozen sea. Each roof had its own shadow, its own story. I wondered how many people were sitting beneath those roofs at that very moment, also looking out their windows, also thinking of distant things. The sea wind blew stronger, tossing my still damp hair. I closed my eyes, letting the night's scent envelop me. It was both mysterious and gentle, like the city itself, like my life at this moment. I remembered the headmistress who had held my hand at the bus stop and told me I understood things to the point of heartbreak. She had said, "You'll be fine, because you're already used to creating your own light in the darkness." But now, I didn't need to create my own light anymore. The city had already turned on its lights. Mrs. Ann had lit the fire in her kitchen. Mr. Thompson had opened his cafe. And from this attic room, I could see it all. The street lamps, the lit windows, the houses radiating warmth. I was no longer the child standing outside the frame of the photograph. I was inside. I had been invited to sit at the table. I thought of the children still in the orphanage, and I made a silent promise to myself. One day, when I had enough, I would go back. But first, I had to learn to believe that for myself. I closed the window, leaving it slightly ajar so the sea breeze could still slip in. I lay down on my bed, pulling the white blanket up to my chin. The smell of bread still lingered on my fingertips. The scent of the sea still carried through the air. The scent of this house, warmth, safety, belonging, still surrounded me. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in my life, I felt not only full in my stomach, but full in my heart. Outside, the streetlights continued their vigil over the city. The sea wind still whispered its secrets, and in the small attic room, a heart was learning to believe that it deserved the best things life could offer.